Hey, welcome everyone. Today we're going to dive into something that's, well, it can be a little tricky, but it's also one of the absolute coolest parts of learning English. Idioms. Seriously, these phrases are the secret code that separates how you learn English in a book from how people actually talk. So let's jump right in and start decoding.
So just to get us started, think about this for a second. If someone told you they were gonna pull your leg, what pops into your head? It sounds a little weird, right? Maybe even a bit uncomfortable. And right there, in that moment of confusion, that's exactly where the magic of idioms lives.
And here you can see that gap laid out plain and simple. The literal meaning, actually grabbing a person's leg, has absolutely nothing to do with what it really means, which is just to tease someone or have a little fun. And it's this huge disconnect that makes trying to translate idioms word for word, well, pretty much impossible.
Which brings us to our first really big point, why you just can't translate these things literally. If you try to figure them out word by word, you are going to get lost fast. Let's dig into why that is.
Okay, so here's the bottom line. The official definition says an idiom is a group of words where the meaning just isn't predictable. I like to think of it this way. The phrase as a whole means something totally different from its individual parts. Once you really get that idea, you've cracked the first part of the code.
So how do these actually show up in the real world? Well, in this next section, we're going to see how they're basically the secret ingredients that make conversations flow. Let's look at a few you are going to hear all the time.
All right, check these out. These three are absolute powerhouses in everyday chat. They let you switch topics, get out of a long explanation, or just throw in your 2 cents. So let's take them one by one.
By the way, is your best friend for a smooth transition. You know, you could be talking about your weekend plans, and then you suddenly remember something important. You just say, oh, by the way, did you get that email I sent? See, it just perfectly connects two totally different thoughts.
It's a long story. This one is a total social lifesaver. Someone asks you why you look so tired, but the real answer involves a crying baby, a car alarm, and burning your breakfast. Instead of all that, you can just say, it's a long story. It's the polite way of saying, trust me, you don't want to know.
Okay, so moving on from just the mechanics of a conversation, idioms are really where language gets its personality. This is how you splash some color and emotion into what you're saying, and it lets you share your feelings in a way that's so much more alive.
So take a look at these three. We've got a fantastic way to talk about being super nervous, a phrase for when something grabs your attention, and a really casual, punchy way to say you totally agree with someone.
You're not just nervous before a huge presentation. You're a bag of nerves. Can't you just picture that? It creates this powerful image of someone just buzzing with anxiety. It's so much more descriptive and, honestly, more relatable.
Now, this slide is super important because it's all about context. On the one hand, you have as regards, which is very formal, something you'd write in a business report. As regards the fourth quarter projections, you know? But on the other side, you've got all say. Your friend says, that concert was amazing, and you go, all say. It's quick, it's casual, it's packed with energy. Using the right one in the right situation, that's a real game changer.
Next up, let's talk about time. People don't always say things like, that happens infrequently. It just sounds a little stiff. Instead, they use all these cool dynamic idioms to make talking about time more interesting.
And here are 3 perfect examples. You've got once in a blue moon for something that hardly ever happens, at the last minute for that rush of urgency, and it's early days when you just need a little more patience.
I mean, what a great visual, right? A blue moon. How often do you actually see one? Practically never. So if you have a friend who lives on the other side of the world, you might say, yeah, we only get to see each other once in a blue moon. It's just a more poetic way to say very rarely.
Ooh, this one is so useful, especially at work. You just launched a new website and your boss asks if it's a success. Well, you can't know yet, so you just say, well, it's early days. It's the perfect way to manage expectations and basically say, hey, let's give it some time and see how it goes.
All right, so we've covered the common, the useful. Now let's just have some fun. It's time to get into the phrases that are just plain weird and wonderful. These are the ones that really show off the playful, creative side of English.
Okay, this is such a fascinating mix. We've got a funny British phrase, a common superstition, something your grandma might say, and a classic American diner phrase. And what's so cool about these is that they're not just phrases, they're little windows into culture, each with its own specific time and place.
I love this one. It's so British. If your friend shows up with a brand new, expensive-looking bike, you might joke,
Whoa, where'd you get that? Did it fall off the back of a lorry? Of course, nobody thinks a truck was literally involved. It's just a funny wink-wink way of suggesting they got it suspiciously cheap.
You'll see and hear people do this all the time. Someone will say something like, "My car's been running great this year, touch wood," and then they'll literally tap on a wooden desk. It's this little ritual to avoid jinxing yourself. And by the way, in American English, you'll almost always hear knock on wood instead. Same idea.
So we've gone on a whole journey here, from basic conversation tools to the really bizarre stuff. And all this brings us back to one big question. What's the point? Why should you even bother learning these quirky little phrases?
This slide just says it all, doesn't it? Idioms are the poetry of everyday speech. And that is so true. This is where language stops being just a tool and starts having a soul. Learning idioms isn't about memorizing words. It's about connecting with the culture, the humor, and the creativity behind the language. It's what makes speaking English really, truly fun.
And so I'll leave you with this to think about. Every single language on Earth is packed with these wonderful, strange little phrases. What's one from your language that would sound completely bizarre if you translated it word for word into English? Thinking about that is the first step to really appreciating this secret, poetic side of language. Thanks so much for joining me.